Welcome to The Art Box, your podcast dedicated to exploring the vibrant art scene in Nevada and beyond. Join us as we embark on a journey through galleries, theaters, studios, public lands, and streetscapes, meeting the artists, curators, archaeologists, nature lovers, and cultural influencers who shape our creative community and our world. Whether you're looking for your next cultural adventure, seeking inspiration for your own artistic pursuits, or simply curious about the world of art, tune into The Art Box. Together, let's open up a world of creativity and imagination. Let's dive in.
Dreams, what if the night is about you and me? So lift your head up to the sky, the witness of your...
Mary Jane,
yes.
welcome. So
Thank you.
Mary Jane and I are at the STEAM Center today, and it is August 29th?
20. Yeah.
29th,
Yeah.
something like
Friday.
that.
It's Friday. I know that.
So it's Friday.
Yep.
And this podcast start, it's not going to be about art. Well, maybe we'll dive into art.
I don't
a
know.
little bit,
It's for me, it was the artist surviving.
This is a deeply personal episode of The Art Box. We're going to sit down with three friends, each of whom shares a life shaped by a missing piece of their identity, an absent or unknown parent. And together, they're going to reflect on the emotional weight of not knowing where you come from, how secrets shape their sense of self, and what it means to reconnect or not with family decades later. Decades later. This is a conversation about identity loss, resilience, and the strange winding paths we walk to find belonging. And it so happens that I know all of these people. So, although Eydie, unless I passed you on a football field sometime when you were a little kid, I don't think we've met.
No.
MJ Stiles, who is a host. Okay, we have Eydie Lieberman, and Eydie's from Maryland. Like me, she was born in Washington, D.C. We're the not a state people. And we have William.
Let's talk.
Let me ask you this.
Let's talk.
Opening reflections. When did you first learn, and MJ, we'll go to you first since you're sitting across from me. When did you first learn that your understanding of your family wasn't the full story?
Had I been paying attention, I would have known a very young child. I had a sister who was 11 years older than me, and she used to take great pride out in public because I didn't look like my other two sisters at all. They were 11 and 13 years older than me. She would always take the opportunity, because somebody would say, "You don't look alike." And she would say, "Oh, that's because she's Elmer Murray's daughter. Ha, ha, ha." And she would leave, letting me stand there with these people. And what I'm saying is she did this all the time from the time I was very, very tiny. And so it was the joke. And so I grew up with that. It was just normal.
Did you know the person that she said?
Yeah, I did.
When she said that's so and so, you knew that person.
Yeah, it was a very small town.
Okay.
I knew him. He actually happened to be best friends with my grandfather. And so fast forward, I was 55 when my mom passed away. My dad had already passed a couple of years prior. And I ran into an old family friend, and she said to me, "You know, Mary, you're nothing like your sisters." And I said, "Yeah, I know." And she said, "No, that's a good thing. It's a compliment." And I said, "Thank you." And I said, "Well, you know the joke." And she just stopped dead in her tracks. She looked at me and she said, "You mean you know?" And I said, "Lynn, I think we need to sit down." And she told me everything. My mom had had an affair with Elmer Murray. Yeah. And my dad, bless his heart, he had been orphaned. And so, when you finally see the final picture, you look back in life and you go, "Oh, all these comments now make sense to me." Because he used to say to me, you will never know what it's like not to be loved. And he would say it with such conviction. And I'd say, "I know, Dad. I know you didn't have a great childhood." And then he'd say, "What would make you say that? I had a great childhood." He was always making lemonade out of lemons. But
Right.
yeah, and I'll tell you, it was like ripping the floor out from underneath me. So
Did your dad know, the man that raised, did your dad know
yes, he did.
that your mother had an affair?
Yes, he did. Yeah,
So everyone in the family knew except you.
except me.
Lovely.
Yeah, and it turned out so. what I did do when I first found out, I mean, I just kind of fell into the ground. I really did. It was very shocking to me. And at first, I still didn't buy into it because my mother was like super prude, right? So I'm like, I just can't envision this. So I did Ancestry.com, and sure enough, yeah, I was a Murray. I was not a Young.
Yeah.
And it was a lot to process. First person I called was my very best friend, Chad, and I asked him, I said, did you know that Dad was not my dad? And he starts laughing, and I'm not laughing. And he goes, oh, wait, Mary, you're serious? And I said, as a heart attack, did you know? And he's quiet, and he goes, oh, my God, this is one of those phone calls that if I say the wrong answer, we might not be friends anymore.
Oh, no.
And he said, no, I didn't know. But then what we all kind of started doing was testing the waters with our friends, and all of our friends didn't know, but their parents knew. So obviously the conversation was out there, but not in front of the kids. So it was really... I kind of went down a deep hole there for a while. It was just all of a sudden every story I'd been told about my lineage and who I wasn't true.
Right.
And so I remember my husband coming home from work one day, and I'm standing in the kitchen just bawling. And he said, oh my God. He goes, I don't know what to do to fix this for you. And I said, you can't. You can't. I've been lied to for 55 years. And it wasn't you that lied to me. He said, you need to go see somebody. He goes, because I can't take this anymore. He said, I really can't stand watching you cry all the time. The good thing about it was because it was a tiny town, I mean, super tiny town, I knew who my brother was. So Elmer and his wife had a child. They actually adopted him. So we're not blood, but we're blood. I reached out to him, and I was afraid to do it, but I wrote him a letter, and I just said, listen, this is who I am. I don't know if you ever heard the rumors growing up, but I did do a DNA test, and it is true. And I said, the only thing I'm asking from you is a cup of coffee, some stories, and if you're willing to share a picture too, I just want to know who my birth father was. And one night, he was about 3 days after I mailed the letter, I get this text, and he says, well, if Larry was your dad, you're my sister. And he has embraced me. We grew up with the same friends. And one time he looked at me and he said, you know, it's actually kind of a miracle we never dated. That would have been a fun one to bring home.
It's a miracle you never got married.
It was such a tiny town, but we had the same group of friends. We were at the same parties. It was fascinating as we started sharing stuff, how close he and I were without knowing we were brother and sister.
All right. Hi, William. Bill.
Hey, Steve.
So we started.
Hello, MJ. Hello.
So we started, and MJ was doing her thing. And I don't know whether you're done.
Yeah, that's the synopsis. We can always go down a rabbit hole, but that's kind of the overview of how it started.
Yeah, so we'll go with Eydie next. But William, the question will be, when did you first learn that your understanding of your family wasn't the full story? Eydie's up.
You said, when did I know, right?
Yeah, it said, when did you first learn that your understanding of your family wasn't the full story?
Okay, so my answer to that is, when did you learn your name was Steve? That's how young I was. I have always known. I cannot remember when I was told. It was something I've always known, just like I know my name.
Interesting.
I was so young. Yeah, and actually it was the adoption agency that suggested they do that. They gave them several books about, being the chosen child and all this other stuff. And my parents did take that advice, and I will always be grateful for that.
That's awesome.
Because I know people that found out, I have one friend of mine that found out his father wasn't his father the night before his wedding. His mother decided that was a good time to tell him.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's just some of the craziest stuff. So I've seen so many people just get really hurt by finding out they were betrayed. No one ever lied to me about it. You know what I mean? Like, no one ever said, I was never lied to about it. So I guess that's one hurdle. It didn't fix all of it, but at least I knew.
Now there's the rest of the story.
Yeah. So
you knew, because my sister was adopted, and they told my sister right up front, just like you.
Right.
And I like how you put that. When did I learn that my name was Steve?
Right.
And I don't think she never learned. So you have some more of the story that you end up finding out who your
Right.
parents were.
When I was told, when I started asking questions about my birth family, that when I turned 18, I can't remember if it was 18 or 21, but anyway, that I had the right to petition the agency for any and all non-identifying information. They had to give it to me. That was the law, but that was it. I had the right to petition the court to get my records opened, and depending on the reason for that would determine whether or not you got your records opened. And the only time I've ever heard of them doing it was for medical reasons. If somebody needed a kidney transplant or something like that, and they had to have a biological family member. But oftentimes what would happen with that is that the person died before they ever got that case to court to get the records open. So it's very, very difficult to get adoption records from that time period open. All adoptions up until 1973, if they were done through an agency, they were sealed, which meant all the records were sealed at the time of the relinquishment. They issued you a new birth certificate. On my birth certificate, it says I was a live birth to my adoptive parents. That is a lie.
Wow.
That is an official government document, and it is a lie. My very first piece of paper as a person in this country is false. It doesn't have where I was born, doesn't have the hospital, doesn't have the doctor's name, but it says I was a live birth born to Lillian and Alan Lieberman. Absolutely false. But yet that's what I have to show people. So that was an issue. Well, yeah, because, you know, the whole thing with the you have to tell the truth thing, and when you teach your kids about lying and stuff, how does that hold water? I mean, it's for a kid, it's quite confusing. Anyway, that was that. So I didn't really pursue it until I got pregnant. I got pregnant with my first child at 25. And I had no medical information. Every time I went to a doctor's appointment, does this run in your family? I have no idea. None whatsoever. You have no medical information? Nothing? No, nothing. So I've had to be labeled as a high risk for everything because they didn't know. Yeah. And the insurance company, this is probably the only time the insurance companies, I guess, forced to do something they don't want to do. Because I was adopted, I had no medical information. They had to allow me to take all screening tests and whatever at the earliest possible age, and they had to cover it because we didn't know if I had a history or not. If any of you had to deal with insurance companies, that was probably the only helpful thing that I've ever had in my life happen because of my adoption. But so when I found out I was pregnant, I really became obsessed with finding out about my family. That was kind of what pushed me over the edge. And I petitioned the agency. I was adopted through the Washington Metropolitan Jewish Social Services Agency. At the time, it was on 16th Street in D.C. It was and still is probably the most expensive and elite adoption agency in the country. And basically, the only thing because my biological mother was not Jewish and my father was, she assumed I've since met my sister, but she assumed that if I went to a family that had money, I would have a better life. And this is back in a time when, we didn't know that addictions had no socioeconomic boundaries. We didn't know that money didn't make you happy because everybody was, trying to get as much as they could. So, I think her heart was in the right place. But sometimes when people can't have children, maybe there's a reason for it and you should leave it alone.
Right.
Just, want to throw that out there because I don't know how my mother ever cleared a psych evaluation. To be honest with you, I have no idea how that happened, but no one ever should have put a baby in her arms. But so I went and I petitioned the agency and they sat across from me. It was like four people, almost like I was in front of a panel, and they had my file open. And I remember I was very pregnant. I just thought, could I waddle fast enough to get out of the building with that file if I just ran over there and grabbed it? Because they're looking at, I knew that they were feet away from me and they had all that information in front of them. I was just right there. I just kept thinking I could just grab that, but then I'd get arrested and have to have a baby in jail, and that wouldn't be good. I did not do that. I quelled that impulse. That was when I found out I had a sister. They said at the time of your birth, you had a sister who was 2.5 years older than you. It did not say if they also put her up for adoption. I had no idea what was her story. I was raised as an only child. My parents they never adopted another one. I really latched on to that piece of information that, I have a sister out there somewhere. As I matured, I kind of thought, I didn't know if I really wanted to search for my parents so much. I was kind of on the fence on that one because I kind of didn't know what if I can't handle the truth type of thing. But I really wanted to find my sister because I didn't have any siblings that I grew up with. So I tried numerous times. I've probably spent well over $20,000 in my lifetime trying to get my record. I appeared. I did file a petition to the court, to the DC court, federal court, to have my records unsealed, and I was denied each time. The last time I went in front of this judge, he looked at me and he said, "You're not getting it. If I see you in my courtroom again, I will hold you in contempt. Am I clear?"
Oh my God.
Yes,
And I just looked at him and smiled. I'm serious. He said, "Am I clear?" And I said, "Crystal." I'm surprised he didn't hold me in contempt there, but I just kept thinking, like, what's it to you?
Well, exactly.
What is it about? Like, why? I'm asking for a piece of paper. Just give me the birth certificate. I don't even want the rest of my file. All I need to know is a name so I can search. I had to have a name. Yeah, I didn't get it. And that's when I thought, like, this is just never going to happen. Then fast forward, we get to Ancestry, right? So Ancestry comes out. I jumped on that one. Nothing. I didn't get any hits. I didn't, it was interesting, but I didn't find any immediate family relatives. Nothing clicked. So then 23andMe came out a few years later, and my kids got me a kit for Christmas because they wanted to know like their nationality background and stuff. And I think when I did Ancestry at the time, it was new and they didn't have all the services and stuff. So they may offer that now, but when I did it, they did not. They didn't give it was just about finding people's DNA that you clicked with. They didn't go through the whole, like, your nationality and what percentage of your lineage was from such and such. And, now they can do that. So anyway, I did the 23andMe, and that's when I found out that I was indeed 50% Ashkenazi. I was half Jewish, so that was a definite. But I'm also 25% Korean, which just threw me for a loop. Yeah, I was okay. I mean, my whole life, people would say, what are you? Are you Italian? Are you Jewish? Are you, I'm a person. Can we start there? but think about it, though. I mean, it's something that we discuss rather openly with people. Lots of people talk about, where their ancestors are from, or I'm Welsh, or I could never have those conversations because I didn't know what I was. I had no idea. I mean, I knew where my parents were from, but I wasn't related to them. I always felt left out of conversations like that. Something that we had discussed the other day, and I don't know, because our stories are so different. You didn't know when you were a child. You didn't find out until later in life, which I personally think is much harder. But when people would see me with my folks, I did not look like them. So it was often people would comment and say, like, "You don't look like either one of your parents." And I would just simply say, "I know, I was adopted." And the next thing out of their mouth, if it was somebody that was a kid, not an adult, anyone my age, the next thing out of their mouth was, "Why didn't your mother want you?"
Ouch.
Wow.
They weren't trying to be mean.
No.
But think about it. In this country, in our culture, we place women and children up on a pedestal, right? Women and children are always out first. And who is the one person that will give you unconditional love? Who was the one person in your life that you used to be able to go to? Your mom, right? I didn't know who mine was. I also didn't have the opportunity to ask her, "Why didn't you want me?" I don't know, but it left this lingering, because whenever somebody would say that in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't know. Why didn't she want me? Was there something wrong with me?
No, of course
It leaves you with that feeling of being not whole.
Absolutely. I have a question. So did you ever find out from your sister what the situation was, why you were given up, just that she believed you'd be better off?
I did find out the situation, and it was it wasn't that terrible, but so apparently my biological parents they knew each other in high school, and the man that my mother married after she divorced my biological father also went to that high school. The three of them knew each other. And there was like this triangle thing going on. Like she dated each one. Like she would go back and forth between them. I guess,
Yeah.
I don't know about that. But anyway, that's how they met. And our mother she had a full scholarship in 1960 to Wharton, a woman. And she found out she was pregnant with my sister, and she had to leave school and come back, and she married our father. They tried to, they tried, but it didn't work. And when they were planning to get divorced, and she found out she was pregnant with me. Now, that's what the agency told me. The details I got from my sister were she was married to Dad, but she asked him for a divorce because she decided that she wanted to marry Ronnie. And that is who she stayed married to until she died. And that was my sister's dad. Our father said he would not give her a divorce unless my mother signed my sister full custody over to him, and I was placed for adoption through a Jewish agency.
Wow.
I'm sorry. No, he didn't say that. No, that was my mother with the Jew. I'm sorry. He didn't say anything about a Jewish agency. He said I'd be placed for adoption because everyone, including my mother, thought I was Ronnie's child.
Oh.
No one ever thought. No one believed for a second that I actually was Sonny Gordon's daughter. Right. All these years later, when I got in touch with my sister and explained to her, because this was all done over email, she didn't tell me this story until we were face to face. She didn't want to blow me out of the water, but she was shocked that I found out through the Gordon side because she didn't think I was related on that side. But so that meant we actually shared this. We were full siblings. She thought she had a half sister out there somewhere. Nobody thought I was my dad. So that's what happened. And she kind of got shuffled around. And I mean, for a man to get full custody of a child in 1963, that was unheard of.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
They did not do that.
No.
So, I haven't asked Dory how she felt about that yet, but she's a lot more passive than I am. She's very sweet and kind, and she just, she's a very happy, content person and doesn't like to make waves. And, she didn't have a great upbringing. I didn't either. And it sounds like, from what she's told me, both of our mothers were very abusive. It sounds like my life would have been kind of similar, regardless of which household I ended up in. But at least I would have grown up with a sister. I would have had a sibling. It's hard when you're in an abusive situation and an only child. No, I was just going to say, my parents, they tried to get pregnant for like 8 years, and they adopted me because, and I very clearly remember asking, like, why did you adopt me if you don't want a kid?
Oh.
And my dad he said, your mother, seriously, because, I ended up in foster care.
Oh, God.
I ended up in foster care towards the end of my high school. I was emancipated at 17 and never looked back. I never lived with them again. I started running away because I didn't want to get hit, and it was kind of a mess.
That you did. I can't imagine having to go through that to be emancipated. That's quite a process in itself.
Yeah, it was. And that did make it harder because that was something else that, people couldn't believe it. Like, why would they adopt a child if they were going to abuse, if they didn't want you? Well, if you're an abusive person, you can't carry that out unless you have someone to abuse, right?
Right.
That's what happened. I mean, my mother was great with babies and dogs because they were, they're completely dependent on you. They don't ask you why. They don't ask you any questions. My dad told me once, everything was great between you two until you learned how to say why and no. Mm-hmm. The second you learned those two words, it was over. Game on. Because she didn't want to be questioned. She had to have all the control and stuff. And fortunately, I'm not like her.
Yeah,
your kids look happy.
Thinking back to the joke that I grew up with, it's like, well, I'm glad I'm not like, my abuse was emotional. Yeah. Mine was very emotional.
Oh, none of it was physical?
None of it was physical. It was very emotional, okay. And it was really rough. Really rough.
I think the verbal abuse actually is worse.
Oh,
and I know some people have a hard time with this, but this is the God's honest truth. I don't remember how many times my mother hit me or punched me. I don't remember. But what I do remember is where I was standing, what I was wearing, what she had on, and what she was doing the first time she looked at me and said, your mother didn't want you and I don't want you either. Get the away from me. That I remember. Yeah. And that still hurts. Yeah. The beatings, I don't feel the pain from that anymore. I still feel the pain from those words.
Oh, yeah. I know for me, it's like every day I fight that things, those
Feelings, yeah.
words, those, yeah.
Because it shakes your foundation. It's like you don't, it's like having the rug pulled out from under you. Like you form this opinion of yourself and who you are and how you fit in the world and, how your family views you in the world. And then all of a sudden one day that flips and changes. Like what?
Wow.
That's why I really think from that end, I was lucky because I always knew. So, maybe I had to struggle with it sooner than you guys did, but I guess because I was a child, I guess kids are so resilient. It was just something I grew up with and I just dealt with. I didn't have it just slam me in the head one day like you did.
Yeah, it was kind of like a bat to my head.
Yeah.
I just about fell to the ground when Lynn said that to me because I had grown up with it as a joke that Elmer Murray was my father. And so then when she said
But did you ever think it was funny?
Well, no, I never thought it was funny.
Then it's not a joke.
And
a joke only works if it's funny.
That's funny, right? And that sister probably did more damage to my psyche than my mom ever did. My mom so there were 3 of us girls, and she would play a game, and you never knew when you were going to be it. But she would do something that would take 2 and pit them against 1. It was the most cruel shit she used to do.
Yeah.
And I remember it was about, 3 months before she died. My husband, he had had enough, and he went into her hospital room and he said, "This shit stops today. I'm not doing this anymore. I am not going to watch you do this to her anymore. I'm tired of it. I come home from work. She's crying. You've hurt her yet again." And he said, "I'm done." He said, "I don't care if you sit here with no one visiting you." He said, "I'm telling you that I am protecting her. This is not happening anymore."
How'd that make you feel?
Quite nice.
Yeah.
That somebody was finally standing up for me. My sister continued because I allowed her to. She, very much like what you just said with your mother, she adored me. I was her little doll that she loved and carried around and did everything with. But the moment I had an opinion that was different than hers, all holy hell broke loose. And she had the manipulative ability to remove me from the family. And so if I did something physically and emotionally, it was really bizarre how she would do it. I was like the greatest thing that ever happened to her, and then I would make a comment that didn't align with her. Mm-hmm. And then she would literally just push me out of her life. She wouldn't return phone calls. I didn't exist. And the family tended to just kind of follow suit with it. It's just like, so there were great moments in my life that I really was an only child. I really didn't have a family because she would systematically push me away because I was a problem. Yeah. And it was.
Why were you a problem? Why were you a problem?
Because
you didn't agree with her.
I didn't agree with her. I didn't agree with her, and I didn't, literally fall to the ground and kiss her feet when she arrived. I mean, that was kind of.
And your mom backed your sister?
Oh yeah, it was a sick little. Both of them narcissistic.
Of course.
And I remember you talking about what you were wearing and where you were sitting and what was happening. Mm-hmm. When I finally, when all this came out. And I did go to my therapist, and she said, "You realize that your sister has several, probably multiple personality disorders." And I said, "Are you sure? Because I'm the common denominator. Are you sure it's not me?" She said, "But the pure fact that you even asked me that proves it's not you." Because anybody that has this would not say, "Is it me?" And I said, "But I mean, seriously, I'm the common denominator here." And she said, no, these people have, and I'd had a couple letters that my sister had, she was a letter writer, and, that was hilarious in its own right. But I'd brought her one, and she's just reading this with her mouth hanging open. And she's like, "No, this is not you." And she said, "You have a successful business, you have a successful marriage, you have tons of friends. This can't be you." Because
right.
She said, "Does your sister have any of those?" And I said, "No. She has friends, but they're all friends that are kept at an arm's length. She never let anybody really into her world because she was desperately worried that she would not look perfect to someone. That was her biggest worry." So if I opened my mouth and exposed something, I was
Right.
neck on the chopping block.
Yeah.
So on one hand,
You were the black sheep of the family.
Oh, totally. Although my oldest sister, she liked to carry that flag. She was, honestly, she was a lot. I think she was bipolar. She had her own issues, but not in the way that my other sister did. And so it was funny when it all came out and my friends found out about it and they were like, geez, Mare, it makes sense now why you were so hated. And I was hated by them. And I thought it was interesting that my friends had picked up on that because I had never said that to them. It was very...
Your friends at what
Did
age?
you feel hated?
Oh, yeah. I was absolutely...
You felt...
I was not...
Hated is a strong word.
Oh, yeah. I was a problem. And that really kind of exploded later in life because I wasn't this shy little shell of a person anymore. I mean, Steve can tell you, I'm kind of...
You're pretty shy. It's hard to get you going to say anything.
And so I do remember one time I lived about an hour from my family, and I drove up to see my dad on Father's Day, and the whole family always got together. You were forced to be together for every holiday, for anything, and it was always miserable for me. I usually physically got ill before I went because I knew something was going to happen. But we were sitting outside, and I was sitting there, and I thought...
This is, don't mean to interrupt, but this is an adult?
Oh, as
You're
an adult. I was in my 30s.
Oh, okay.
Definitely in my 30s. And I remember sitting there and I thought, I could get up, go to get my car and leave, and no one would even know I was gone. That's how invisible I was.
I was going to say you felt invisible.
Yeah. Yeah. Although,
nobody wants to feel invisible.
With all that being said, my dad, I was not invisible to him. And my grandmother, she was the one who saved me as a little girl. But
me too.
Really? Yeah, she was.
Yes, my Nana. Without my Nana, you wouldn't like me at all.
Yep.
I wouldn't like me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that. And that's probably the only reason I would ever say I'm glad that I was adopted by the people I was adopted by, because without her, I wouldn't have been able to work through all this shit.
Yeah. Yeah,
she was my unconditional. She was my person.
Yeah. She was your mom's mother or your dad's mother?
No. My father's mother. So both of my parents were only children. My father, when his father passed away, he moved his mom down with us. And then my mother returned to work, and she was my primary caretaker until I was 10 when she passed.
And that's a tough one.
But we do know that between the ages of 2 and 6 with a child, abuse to a child between the ages of 2 and 6, the chances you'll undo it are slim to none. It's very difficult. And there was none. There was no abuse. I was loved. I felt wanted. I was happy. I had a great life, and it radically changed after she died. Yep. Radically. Yep. My mother never laid a hand on me until my grandmother was gone.
Yeah, she knew she couldn't. Isn't that interesting? Because my grandmother, who was my mother's mother, I remember when she got sick and she told my dad, she said, I'm okay with dying except for Mary. What's she going to do without me? Oh. And I guarantee you, when she died, my world, I went on a tour of destruction. I was 18 when she passed away, and I did go on a tour of destruction. I was hell-bent on doing whatever, because no one was left, except for my dad. My dad and I were very, very tight. And towards the end of his life, he was not well. He had gotten shingles in his brain, and he never was the man he had been before. Super emotional. And I would show up, and he would hug me to the point where it was like, Dad, you're actually physically hurting me. You got to loosen up a little bit here. And he said, my life didn't begin until the day you were born. You were the greatest thing I ever had happen in my life. And he would say this in front of my sisters. So it's no wonder. I mean, it just kind of catapulted the why.
Did he know that he wasn't your dad?
Yeah, but I think he did that.
What a great man.
Oh, he was a great man, especially in a small town. Yeah. He would, and of course now looking back, when he would say to me, you will never know what it's like not to be loved. He was hell-bent because he had gone through that being an orphan. And so he was not going to allow that for me. Yeah, he was amazing. But so my grandmother dies when I'm 18.
Did it shock you that your parents stayed together even after your mother had an affair?
Yes. Although my brother and I sat down and we laughed and we said, I can tell you exactly how this fell out. Mom had the affair. She went to her mom and said, what the hell do I do? I'm pregnant, and my mom, 100%, my grandmother said, well, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go home, and that little girl is yours and Larry's, and this shit stops today, and you're putting your marriage back together. Because that's who my grandmother was. It was like, she was so full of love and life. Mm-hmm. But if you said, wow, what a beautiful blue sky, she'd say, oh, no, dear, that's orange. You'd be like, you're right, Grandma, it is orange. You just never wanted to disappoint her. And she was a strong German woman. And I guarantee you, she told my mom, you are going to go home and fix this. That little, well, of course, they didn't know it was a girl back then, but that baby will not be hurt by this, and you're going to fix it. But I remember her taking me as a very, very young girl. My birth father had a store. It was called the Trading Post, and he literally did that. He traded anything and everything, and I mean, it was a glorified junk joint is really what it was. And my grandfather made arrowheads, and my grandmother, I'm sure it was all a ruse so that he could see me. She would take these arrowheads out to him while I was with her, and I remember sitting on his lap in that store. And I couldn't have been more than like 3. I just remember being there, and it was such a big store. It was huge. He was always so nice to me. And it's just so funny when you think back. Once you know the end story and you start going back to snippets in time, and you're like, oh, now that makes sense. So right. I think she was concerned that he had some kind of relationship with me, even as a faraway friend. And he did show up in my life at different times. My brother and I were laughing about how he found a way to be in my life somehow, some way. And of course, in a small town, that's pretty easy to do. You know, he was on the school board, so he would show up at my school, you know, and you wouldn't think anything of it because...
Did you ever find out what your biological father's, did he want a relationship with your mom, or... how did that play out?
I would love to think it was a love affair, but I really don't think it was. I think it was a lust affair. My dad, who raised me, at that time in his life, he was very busy trying to make something of himself. So he was working a lot, and my mom was home with the kids. To be quite honest, my mom should have never had children. I mean, she just shouldn't have. She wasn't a loving, caring mom. She wasn't. She had a darn mean streak in her. Yeah. And so now she's at home with these 2 kids. With my mom. Yeah, she's home with these 2 kids that she really didn't want. And we had a small gentleman's ranch, and my mom was a big horse person, and that's how I grew up, riding horses and barrel racing and all that stuff. But my birth father was also a horse guy. And so rumors around town evidently were, did you see that those 2 were off on another horseback ride, in quotations, you know? So I think there was a lot of that going on. And I think and he was very good looking. I think she was just enamored he was everything my dad wasn't. And
right. But I guess for it to be kept under wraps so that, it was like subterfuged or something, like it was, you said like it was a joke, but I'm just wondering how hard that would be for your dad to have to face the man that he knew was your father, often, right? They were in each
Oh, yeah. It was a very small town, and they were both very successful leaders in the town. So they were in a lot of stuff together. And my dad was not quite.
Did everyone else in the town know?
Yeah.
You said your family and friends, but everyone in the town knew?
I think everybody knew. It was not a secret. My dad had a real estate office. To you. Except for me. I was the idiot in the corner.
You keep saying it was a joke. It was a joke. That's not what I would call a joke. It was a secret.
It was a huge secret. But there was a gal who worked for my dad in the real estate agency, and she came to him one day and she said, "You do realize that little girl is not yours, right?" And he said, "You can pack your shit up. You're fired." I mean, he was just not.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like he wasn't having it. I was his little girl.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did hear.
Good for him. Good for him.
I know. I had a great dad. I really did. My mother was, that's up for a vote. It was rumored at one time he went out to Elmer's house, my birth father, and knocked on the door and said, "You will leave my family alone, or the next time I come back, I'm going to kill you." It was like, that was it. So, I don't know if that's true or not. Have no idea. Nobody is left alive. So.
See, I think I would reintroduce myself as the Cinderella of these three people because I've lived a charmed life compared to these two. I guess I found out I was adopted when I was about 10 years old, and actually, a good friend of mine knew it. He remembered that my mom had told me, and I had forgotten all about it. And then one day, we had a conversation, and he said, "Yeah, you're adopted." And I was like, "No, I'm not," because I didn't remember my mom telling me. So I went back and talked to my mom, and my mom said, "Yeah, you're adopted." So, and that never bothered me. You know, so I just put it in my back pocket and walked off and had a great life.
Neither one of the parents that raised you was your biological parent?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
So, and with MJ, she had one biological parent and one not. So, Bill, how did that make you feel when you found out?
It didn't bother me. There's not a whole lot in this world that bothers me. I could go through floods and hell and high water, and it wouldn't bother me.
Did you ever were you ever curious to find out about your biological family?
There we go. Yes, absolutely. But it was something that I would only pursue for a short period of time. I would let it drop for a year or two, and then I'd pick it back up for like maybe a month. I would stay in touch with things with my paperwork for the adoptions and things like that. But
do you have your original birth certificate? Like, was your adoption sealed?
No.
Do you know?
No.
It was not sealed.
Apparently not. No, it was a private adoption.
Oh, it was private. Okay. That's different.
And how I got that was...
What year were you born?
1953.
53. Okay, so that was 10. And that was still, because the sealed adoptions were done up until 73, which Roe versus Wade, once that passed, it changed the face of adoption in this country forever. So they don't do them anymore. You were born in California?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got pretty liberal adoption laws, I think, even still.
Do they?
Yeah. DC still to this day, DC has some of the toughest adoption laws in this country. If you don't want to be found, you finalize your adoption in DC.
Wow.
Well, think who's in DC? Who's in DC?
Yeah.
Diplomats, senators, congressmen. They're transient, very transient. People come, people go. You know, a lot of money.
It's the politicians that are hiding their children.
Mm-hmm.
So, William, you were born in California, but you have a Baltimore accent. These guys probably don't know that you have a Baltimore accent. But I got it. You got that great Baltimore accent.
Yes, I do. And I'm very, very, very proud.
He hasn't hunned me once.
No, I'm not that part of Baltimore.
I know. Drives me crazy.
My mom always stayed on top of me about my English, about my dialect. I could never get away with saying library. There was always library.
You never found out anything about your biological family?
I did the search off and on for years and years. And then one day I was reading this one.
What was it that you were what was it that you were interested in finding out, though? Like, I'm just curious, like, what motivated you to search at all? Because you say, like, it wasn't a big deal.
I was curious as to who my biological parents were.
Just curious
how I turned out. But I wonder how they turned out. I mean, are you a product of your environment, or are you a product of your genes, or what?
Right. Nature versus nurture.
Yeah, exactly. So I was curious about that. I read somewhere where somebody had said, well, what you do, you send a request to the hospital where you were born. And I knew the hospital where I was born. It was Las Madonnas Community Hospital. And he said, the article said, write to them, tell them that you have just changed doctors, and that you need any and all birth records of my birth sent to his office. So that's what I did. And it makes sense in a way, because the hospital would not know that I was adopted. I was adopted like 5 days after I was born.
Right.
So the hospital would not know. Yeah, they sent the...
Yeah, because it was private. If it wasn't a private adoption, the hospital would have known.
And so when I got the adoption record, well, when I got the birth records, it said my mom's full name and my dad's full name, a little bit of history.
what I wouldn't have given to be able to do it if it was that simple.
I was shocked at how easy it was.
I'm very shocked at how easy it was. I mean, it kind of makes me a little irritated with the system.
Bill, how old were you when you got your birth records?
In the hospital, I was about 34. I was about 34 when I found out. And both of my adopted parents are still alive.
So when you were growing up, you didn't even, I mean, did you look like your parents? Did you fit, like, was that ever?
Nobody ever said anything about that. Nobody said, hey, you look like your mom and you look like your dad. Nobody ever said that to me.
Then you must have
And I
passed.
don't know if yeah, I must have passed the muster.
Yeah, because that was something that was asked as soon as somebody saw me with my parents. I knew if there was anybody in the crowd that didn't know me already, somebody was going to ask me, like, those are your parents? You don't look anything like them. Yes, I know. I'm aware.
Isn't it funny how when people say that, they think it's almost like they're advising you, like you didn't notice.
Yeah. Sure.
Yes, I know. Thank you.
Like when somebody hands you a gift, I've had this happen to me. Somebody hands me a gift and then tells me what it is before I open it.
Yeah.
Happy birthday. I got you a sweater. It's like, okay, thank you.
Thanks. I'm sure I'm going to love it.
Here, let me open it so I can see what it looks like.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
So
people say,
did you ever find out, did you contact your birth parents? How did that work out, Bill?
I had the names. Under occupation, it listed her as a housewife, and under his, it listed Air Force. So, being it could be anywhere in the U.S. But I started the search in California, and I thought, well, let's see, he'd be like 60-some years old, maybe retired. Where do Air Force people go to retire? So I was just searching online as to where he may have retired to, and never did find that. But then, lo and behold, Ancestry.com came about, and as soon as I submitted the sample, it came back and said, I've got 3 siblings.
Full siblings?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. I've got 2 sisters and a brother, and then I found out after being in contact with my sisters, I found out that I've got a half-brother. So, yeah.
So were you the first of the children?
Yes, I was the first, the oldest. I was the only one that was put up for adoption. My biological mom was 6 months pregnant when she walked down the aisle to marry my biological father. And my one sister and I, we talk a great bit. Her name is Rena May. And we talk a good deal about my situation. And she said, can you imagine that father to have put me up for adoption? Because I was his first child and the first male. And here he is having to put me up for adoption.
And did you find out why they put you up for adoption?
No, didn't find out why. But our guess was it would have been embarrassing for her to be pregnant or getting married. And have other people maybe say, "Well, did they get married because they had to? Or what was the reason for that?"
Isn't it funny how you don't hear that anymore?
Yeah, you don't, do you?
You never hear that anymore, but I know when I was in my early 20s, that was still being, they had to get married. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like everyone knew what that meant,
Yes, they did.
Oh, yeah.
Single worst reason in the world to get married.
I used to joke around about that, saying, well, they were afraid that they were going to have some mathematicians in the family saying, let's see, she gave birth 6 months after they were born, and, well, that doesn't work. He must have been pregnant then.
I went to a lot of there's support groups. There's lots of support groups out there for both for birth parents and adoptees.
Really?
Yeah. When I started because I started my search way before the internet. And you want to talk about tedious work. I mean, it was completely just a lot of writing letters and mailing stuff and, phone calls. And
that's hard because you have to wait for an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
But these support groups were just gut-wrenching. I never thought about how my birth mother felt because up until I was 25 when I had my first child, I was a child myself, so I was always from my perspective and from how I'm feeling. But then once I went to a couple of these support groups, and I listened to some of the birth mothers and the stories they told. It allowed me, I think I forgave my biological mother before I even met her, because some of the stories, I mean, some of the things that parents did to their daughters because they got pregnant when they weren't married was just, it's incomprehensible to me that anyone could do that to their child. But some of these women, they were now grown women. This has ruined their lives. I heard things like, they told me the baby died. When I woke up in the hospital, they said the baby was dead.
Oh my God.
Or even worse, because back then back in the 60s, they would give women, they would put them in something called twilight sleep when they went into labor, and they would give them something called scopolamine that allowed them to be coherent enough to follow directions in the delivery room, but they would have no memory of it. Like I don't remember what the drug was designed for, and of course they don't do it anymore. So these women would wake up kind of in a drug like foggy hangover, and well, where's my baby? What baby? You didn't have a baby. And these women are walking around thinking they're crazy. Like my whole family was in on it. Like everybody told me the baby died.
That's horrible.
Or it is. It's and that's what I'm saying. I cannot imagine how anyone would think it would be good to tell this to anybody. I mean, I was beside myself. I really was.
I had a girlfriend. This is a story that just will blow your mind. She got pregnant. They were, high school sweethearts. They had planned on getting married, and the parents were like, "No, that's not happening." They locked her in the upstairs of their house. They told everyone that she was away visiting family somewhere, and if company was to come over, it was an old house, right? She's upstairs. If she had to go to the bathroom, she would have to crawl on her hands and knees so she didn't make any noise. And when it came time to have this child, her father took her across the border into California to have the baby, and they listed him as the father. They brought it home and raised it as her sister. They told everybody, they told everybody that it was a family member that had, gotten in trouble, and they adopted this baby from them. And so fast forward, that adult baby finds out that her sister's really her mother. And that was a can of
oh my God.
crap. I mean, talk about psychological warfare. My God. It's crazy.
I can't imagine it.
That's and something that I heard this a lot from people that were adopted through Catholic Charities. They were a big one back in the 60s. They had they would tell like two standard stories, and one was your parents were killed in a car accident, and the other one was your mother died having you.
All such cruel stories to tell.
Right, because now these kids are growing up telling people, both my parents were killed in an accident, and that's why I was put up for adoption, or my mom, I don't. Some of these people, I'm sure, never found out and didn't know the difference. I guess ignorance is bliss in that situation. What you don't know can't hurt you. I guess that would apply in a situation like that, because
kind of like my situation. I mean, I was totally ignorant to.
Do you ever wish you didn't know? Do you ever wish, I wish I had never found this out?
No, I'm so glad I did. I just wish I had had the opportunity to sit down with my birth father and just talk. And that's where the anger comes in, because then that option was taken away from me. And I understand why they did it. My brother and I both said, I think they did it in the beginning to protect us. Because in the 60s, early 60s, this was still a stigma of, you're the bastard.
Shame.
Yeah, you're the bastard child, and your dad's a, homewrecker, blah, 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 the whole thing. But at some point... And here's the deal. I had some pretty... Or
you're unwanted, like I was. You're made to feel like, you were just a throwaway, like nobody really cared about you. They just threw you out.
But I had some fairly severe health stuff in my early 30s, late 20s. That would have been a real good time to come forward, folks.
You think?
That would have been a real good time to come forward and say, we might need to... But I will never forget the day I went to see my parents, and I walked in the house, and normally my dad greeted me with great love and hugs, and this one time was different. He came out from the back side of the house, and he looked straight at me and pointed at me, and he said, "Elmer Murray died," and just stared me down. And I went, "Oh, how old was he?" I mean, I was like, that was a weird interaction, Dad. Why are we doing this?
Why would he have done that?
You didn't know
No.
about Elmer Murray then?
Well, I knew who he was.
Oh, okay. But
No,
you
I knew
didn't
who
know
he was, but
your
I didn't
father.
know that he was my birth father.
Okay.
But my dad, of course, had spent his whole time, I think he was just terrified I would find out and I wouldn't love him anymore. And I think that was really what the basis of him taking that to the grave. Mm-hmm. And he said to me about a month before he passed away, he was in a really bad place. He said to me, he goes, I've been really lucky. And I said, I know, lucky Larry, ha ha ha. He'd always said that. Lucky Larry. And he said, no, damn it. He said, I've had 3 really awful things happen in my life. 1 was losing my parents. 2 was losing your brother. Their first child died of SIDS. And 3, then you will never know. He said the third one you will never know.
You were the third one.
And I was the third horrible accident that had happened in his life.
Oh, no. Third time's a charm, don't you know?
Yeah, that's right. Third time's a charm. I feel like I was a very lucky child because, let's face it, if an abortion had been legal in 1963, my mother probably would have aborted me.
MJ, that is the one. When I was thinking about, or fantasizing, I should say, about meeting my biological family, there were 2 things that I always wanted to ask my mother. And now at this point in my life, I would never, because I wouldn't be able to handle the truth, I don't think. But I always wanted to ask her, 1, when's my birthday? I just wanted to know if she ever remembered my birthday. And 2, if it had been 73 instead of 63, would I have been an abortion instead of an adoption?
Yeah. And I think I would have been, had it not been for my grandmother. I still say my life depended a lot on my grandmother because she was my savior. She was an amazing lady. I love. I still can go to my knees crying over the loss of her. Sometimes she was just that much of a presence in my life. I would do literally anything. They lived about a quarter of a mile for us, and I would do anything to be with her instead of at home with my mother.
That woman, my grandmother, made me feel like I belonged to her more than my parents ever did.
Yep. I totally understand that. Totally do. Yeah. I remember one time I was really sick and I was on the couch and my mom came in to see how I was. And I remember this like it happened yesterday. And I pushed her away from me and I said, I don't want you. I want grandma.
Oh.
Well, she was never there. And when she wasn't very loving. And here's the deal. I was her favorite. I mean, she treated my other sisters way worse. So, and then I wonder how many times did she look at me and was she thinking of Elmer? Wonder.
Yeah.
Just wonder those things.
I remember when I was a kid, I'm a very nocturnal person by nature anyway, but I would, when I had to go to sleep and the adults would sit downstairs and talk, and I would sneak down the stairs up until where the wall ended so I could eavesdrop on their conversations. And I remembered one night, my mother was a very, very angry person. She treated my grandmother like shit. She treated my dad like shit. She didn't discriminate when it came to that.
Because that kind of sounds like my mom, too.
I heard my grandmother say to my father, and she had a raised voice, and she never spoke with a raised voice. She said, Alan, you have got to get that kid away from her. She's going to ruin that girl. And I knew she was talking about my mother, and I knew I was the girl, and that was my dad. He never actively abused me, but he didn't do anything to stop it. And I remember it was in my 30s, I was well into therapy, and I had to take my dad off that pedestal because he didn't do me any favors. Mm-mm. If I ever heard anyone speak to one of my children the way my mother spoke to me, my ass would have them out of there so fast your head would spin.
Yeah.
I would never, ever allow that. He did nothing. He never hit me, but he didn't stop her from hitting me. He never called me names, but he never said anything to her for doing it.
Yeah.
So, he didn't protect me. And that's a parent's job. Mm-hmm. And he failed at his job. And his reason that he would give me was that he took vows. He made wedding vows. It's like, what? And you didn't make a vow. Like, didn't somebody tell you had to take care of me when you adopted me? I mean, isn't a legal transaction like a vow, right?
You ask him that, Eydie?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how one is different from the other. Mm-mm. And I know there's always been controversy about, do you choose your husband or your wife, or do you choose your kids first? And, my response would be, they're all my family. I would choose them all. But, how do you just let somebody, and I did used to wonder, if I was really his child, would he have done something, or would he do something because I can remember begging him to step in. Why don't you do anything? Why don't you stop her?
And he never really had
I never
an
got
answer?
No, my father, he was like 18 when he enlisted to go over to World War II. He my father was Alan Lieberman, who's a young Jewish man, and he quit. He was an only child. He never would have been drafted. He quit school and went over because he wanted to kill Nazis, and that's what he did. And I remember my grandmother saying too, she said, the boy I sent to Germany, I never saw him again. He never came home. Whatever happened over there, whatever he saw changed him radically.
Yeah.
He had trauma onset diabetes. Do you know how rare that is? Like sometimes in very severe car accidents, or like when someone's been traumatized severely, their pancreas can shut down, and it's called trauma onset. When my dad came back from Germany, he had nobody else in the family ever had diabetes, not before and not since.
Wow.
So something, and he survived the Battle of the Bulge. So
Yeah.
I have an idea. We all can have an idea about it, but not really.
So William, Bill, sorry.
It's all right.
I see William on everything, and then I'm like, no, he said Bill. You
It's
have
all right, Will's fine.
you have a relationship with your siblings?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, 2 weeks from now, they're coming up to visit with us, me and my wife.
That's awesome.
It is. I can't tell you. I don't know. I feel kind of bad because I had this great, wonderful life.
Why should you feel bad
And,
about that?
Because I feel like I should have some pain or suffering or something here somewhere just to make it feel, just to balance out my life a little bit. But my heart breaks for you guys. Now, I knew that there could have been a downside to my adoption, but it wasn't.
You had a beautiful story. That's awesome.
Yeah. And every now, I think when adoption works, it is a beautiful thing, but it doesn't always work.
No.
Bill, you said you were 5 or 6 days old when your adoption? You said you were just days old when you were brought.
Yeah, just days old.
And MJ, you were brought home immediately from the hospital too, because you were with your mom. Your mother is your biological mother.
Yes, my mother is my biological mother.
Right. I was born February 28th, and I was placed with my parents on April 25th, and I have no idea where I was from February 28th to April 25th. Where was I? In a holding cell? I mean,
I was wondering.
And again, another secret, it's just all this, secret squirrel stuff. Drives you crazy.
And that's the one thing I talk about my brother, and he is not my blood brother, but he was adopted by my biological father and his wife. But here's the funny part. If we were not brother and sister, we would still be cousins because, and I know that sounds really weird, but his mother, her uncle, was my biological wife's.
Your biological wife's?
No, my biological father's wife was related to the uncle of my brother's mom. Okay, so she had gotten pregnant, supposedly by some...
This was a small town.
Supposedly it was a serviceman, and he was supposed to come meet her, and they were going to go off into, happily ever after. Well, he never showed. And so they're all sitting around and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do with her because I was 56, 57. You didn't have an unwed mother. It still just wasn't a thing. And so my biological father and his wife said, we will adopt it. They had wanted a child and hadn't been able to do that. And so they adopted him. So he still would have been a relative of mine, but he's my brother now. But he had... if he were on this conversation, it would be pretty. He's very much like William. He knew from a very young age he was adopted. He knew who his mother was. They never stopped him from having a relationship with her. He still to this day does not know who his biological father is. That has been a dead end for him.
Has he done 23andMe or Ancestry?
Yeah, he's done it all, and it comes up with nothing. So I'm not sure, why. He had a very great life. He's had a wonderful life. He has 2 beautiful boys who are married and have children, and then of course, he gained me as a sister. So how could you not be happy about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
He's been very sweet to me, and he has shared so much about my father with me, and has really wrapped his arm around me, and every once in a while he'll just put his arm around me and kiss me on the head because he's quite tall, and he says, "I love you, sis." And it's sweet.
That's sweet.
Yeah, because the rest of my family that I was raised with, they have nothing to do with me. They're very angry that this story was ever brought out into public, which I find kind of humorous because it's not their story. It's not their story, and it's not my fault.
Exactly.
It
Exactly.
really has nothing to do with them, but they don't see it that way.
It sounds like you have a cluster of narcissists in your
Oh
family.
God, yes. Yes, and one of the first things I told my husband, I said, "Well, shit, now I know which side of the crazy came from. It was my dad, not
I
my
know,
mother,
right?
even though my mother was crazy." Yeah,
Lord.
I had a family of narcissists, that's for sure. Good Lord.
Your own kids. When did you tell them, and how has it impacted relationships and ongoing relationships as you found out more?
My experience was very good. After I met with my brother, my husband and I met up with him and his wife. Afterwards, my brother looked at me and he said, the million-dollar question in the room is, do we tell our children or do we keep this to ourselves? And I said, I don't have a problem. This is nothing I feel like I need to hide from. This is the truth. It's what happened. And he said, I feel the same. And so we both agreed that we would go home and contact our kids. And if it was fine with them, then it's fine. And his two boys, our son, they were all like, well, that's cool. We can't wait to meet him.
Yeah.
So it's been a really positive outcome. In fact, Chantel Murray, that I did that interview with, that wrote that children's book,
Right.
that is my niece.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, that's my niece. That's my brother's daughter-in-law. So, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm close with them. So I had a very positive outcome on that. How did it go for you guys?
My kids, just like I kind of did the same thing with them. I started telling them when they were very, very young. They've just always known. They are extremely happy for me. They've known this has been a big deal. So they're not as passionate about it because it just doesn't really affect them as much. And the other thing, too, is that their dad was one of 9 kids. So they have lots of cousins and they have 8 aunts and uncles. And they have that great sense of extended family, which I never had. And honestly, when I was dating, if I was out on a date with someone and he said he was an only child, there was not a second date. I would never have married somebody. That was a big, big, big check on my list. When you're looking for a mate and you're, in that period in your life, and it's like there are some things you have to have and some that you're not willing to flex on. And it was like, I have got to, if I'm going to marry anybody, they're going to be somebody that has a big family because I want my kids to have that. But they've always been supportive of me. And, they now have a nephew on their mother or a cousin on their mother's side of the family. So they've been very supportive.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they know it's been hard on me.
For me, I had 2 children, 2 daughters. My youngest one has passed away.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So am I. She's loved my life.
Wow.
So sorry. I can't even fathom that.
Yeah, it was rough. It still is.
We all know we're going to grow up and bury our parents one day. No one should have to bury their child.
Right.
Yeah, so right on that one. But it was 6 years ago that all this came about, that I found my siblings, my biological siblings. My youngest daughter never knew that I found them, but this one does. And she is actually, I have taken my oldest sister to go and meet my oldest daughter. So that's been great. And they stay in touch a lot. They trade pictures and text messages and phone calls.
So everyone was really open-minded and open with you about it, too. That's good.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So they're having a good time. Matter of fact, let's see, not this week, but the following week, my 2 sisters are coming up to visit, and we're supposed to go meet my oldest daughter for lunch. This will be the first time that my oldest daughter is meeting my youngest sister, Carolyn. So
Yeah, her aunts. That's great.
That is great.
yeah, and they actually encourage her to call her aunts, even though they're not. Well, they are biologically, but not legally noted as aunts. But biologically, they are, and they encourage it.
Not legally. What do you mean not legally? I don't.
Well, just by they're not listed anywhere in paperwork as being aunt. Okay.
As being okay.
I guess you'd say it by the birth certificate, by the almighty birth certificate.
The almighty. the fraudulent birth certificate.
Yes. What I get out of all this is thank God we moved past all of that. Hopefully, kids today, like you said, that, they had to get married. That isn't said anymore. You never hear that.
Right.
We've moved past that and the stigma attached to anything like that. And like when you said, how did your kids react? Well, I think, our son was already late 30s, he, he's like, whatever. And, it wasn't a secret that I was being abused, and it was tough. It was really tough because I was emotionally held hostage. And to be honest, when I found out that was the truth. It was like freeing. All of a sudden, I allowed myself to let that family go because they weren't serving me. You know, my parents were both dead. I mean, everyone was gone.
Right.
All I had left was this horribly abusive sister. And my other sister, bless her heart, she was an addict. Alcohol really kind of took over with her, and Oxy was kind of her drug of choice too. So she passed away almost 4 years ago now. She's been gone, so the only, I guess you would say, blood relative I have left is my sister, which I don't consider her family. I just don't. Legally, yeah, she is, but no, she's not. She's never been a positive person in my life. And you know, here's another funny thing I found out. So before we moved down here to Mesquite, I went out to lunch with two of my cousins, and one of the cousins was the same age as my sister. I was a little apprehensive to how this was going to go because I was always under the impression that her and my sister were real tight. Same age, went to high school together. You know, we lived quarter mile apart. My cousin looked at me and she said, "Are you kidding me?" She goes, "Your sister's a bitch." And I said, "Why didn't anybody tell me this?" And she said, "She's one of the meanest people I've ever known." And I said, "Oh my God." She said, "Mary, I feel bad. I never knew all this stuff was going on." And I said, "Well, you wouldn't have because it was the family secret. It was. The abuse, the emotional abuse, all of that was very much a secret. It was very important to my dad and my sister who was doing a lot of the abuse, even my mom, that we appeared to be the perfect family." And
So your dad allowed the abuse to...
Yep.
Your dad also allowed the abuse?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, he never stopped it.
Well,
I remember having a conversation with him one time. I remember sitting in the car and I was crying. And I said to him, "Why don't you get out? You have an option. I don't." And he said to me, "I will never leave you girls." And I said, "But you can get out. For the love of God, save yourself." But he wouldn't. And she was mean as a snake. Before he died and he was really ill, she would lock him out of the house and he would sleep in the middle of the field in his truck. He had injured his back, probably sleeping in the truck out in the middle of the field, for God's sakes. He couldn't walk and she wouldn't help him. She made him crawl through the house to go to the bathroom.
Wow.
Yeah. That's the kind of stuff that went on behind these closed doors that were supposed to be so pearly perfect.
Sounds like she ate her young in a previous life.
I know, right?
That's what I used to say about my mother. It's like my mother definitely ate her young in a previous life.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember feeling...
Nobody ever could have put a baby in her arms. That actually angered me. The system failed me badly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's insane. I remember my dad saying before I was born, he almost had her committed to an insane asylum.
Oh, so let's get pregnant and have a child? That's better?
Well, of course, I wasn't his, so...
That's true.
She had the affair. And I think what he was referring, he was not able to control her. I think she was a wild wingnut out there and I think he knew it. And then when he found out she was pregnant with, another man's baby, he decided to take care of me. Although, did he really? Because he didn't put a stop to it. He never once set anybody down in the family and said, "This is unacceptable behavior. This is not how you treat a family member. This is not how you treat somebody you quote unquote love."
Right.
His way of handling it was to go behind the scenes and he would massage the situation. He'd be like, "Well, you know how your sister is, blah, blah, blah. And she's your sister and we love her." And it's like, what's being told to her?
Yeah.
No one ever had to say...
Yeah.
Yeah, no one ever had to say they were
that
sorry.
to my dad. Why don't you do something? I would beg him to take me out of there.
Yeah.
It's like everyone was afraid of my mom because...
Oh, yeah. I had a friend from school say that she was afraid of my mom one time. It's like everybody was. She was wicked.
And even, as a kid, when people would say it to me when I was younger, and it was almost like an embarrassment, when my mom lost her temper, you could hear her screaming down the street. I mean, New Yorkers are loud. They're just loud people. I can remember my friends would come over and they're like, "Why are your parents yelling at each other?" It's like, "Oh, they're not yelling at each other. You will know when my parents are yelling at each other." The pictures on the wall used to shake. And forget this, what will the neighbors think? Everyone in the neighborhood could hear what my parents were arguing about.
Oh, geez. Yeah, see, in my house, my dad wouldn't fight back. He just wouldn't. He wouldn't fight back. So she just got away with everything. And I remember after he died, I was visiting her, and she said to me one day, she goes, "I feel really bad." And I said, "About what?" She said, I was mean to your dad. And I said, I know. But the more I think about that, I think she was
I would have said, you're mean to me too.
to pick somebody you're not mean to. I mean, you're mean to
know,
your
right?
grandchildren, for God's sake. But I kind of wonder if she wasn't alluding to me about the affair.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
she maybe was throwing out a hint. And of course, it went right over my head because why would I? I mean, why
Right.
would
Why would you think that? Right.
Yeah, I didn't find out until years later that probably is what she was talking about. You know, forget about the time you locked him out and he had to sleep in the field in his truck and he had to crawl through the house to go to the bathroom. I mean, I guess in her mind, those weren't mean things.
Hey, what I've noticed for all of you, and I can understand for William, you call your adoptive parents mom and dad, and William, that's all you knew, so
Yeah.
that makes sense. Edie, you know, even though it took a while, you still call mom and dad.
I do. The people that raised me are my parents. You know, they for all the negative things I've said about my mom, I was taken to the doctor when I was sick. I was clothed. I got an education. I was taken to nice places, nice vacations. Like from a material standpoint, my parents were well off, and materialistically, I had a privileged life.
I did too.
But I will be the first person to tell you that money absolutely does not make you happy. It simply will improve the environment that you are in and you are miserable in. That's it.
Yeah.
The money doesn't make you happy. It just meant that I was in a cleaner place, that I was being abused. I don't know, and could it have been worse? Yes. It could have been a lot worse, and I'm very aware of that.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to minimize anybody else's experience, and I'm not trying to say I don't appreciate the financial privilege that I had being my parents' child. I'm very appreciative. There was a little bit more damage than goodness that came out of it.
Yeah, I agree. I had a very privileged life. I really did. I had everything I could have ever wanted, really. I wasn't denied anything. And like I said, my dad used to tell me on the regular that I was the greatest thing that ever happened to him.
And you call him?
He's my dad.
It's your dad.
Yeah, and I think, to be quite honest, that's a hell of a ballsy move. To stand up in front of a whole community that knows your wife did this, and you're going to stand there on your dying day and claim that child as yours. That took a lot of guts for him to stand up and say, that is my daughter.
MJ, you deserve that. You deserved that.
Yeah, I did.
You definitely deserve that. He didn't do you a favor. He did what was right.
Yes, he did. He did what was right. He did the manly thing, really. He could have thrown her out and said, I have 2 kids here and you can get out, and what would she have done?
Yeah.
I would have probably grown up under the roof of my grandparents, which wouldn't have been the worst thing because they were fabulous. But yeah, I mean, I have to admire what he did from that standpoint.
Would you guys give, and I guess my last question here as we wrap this up, what would you say to someone who's beginning a similar journey?
For me, I hope whoever's going through a similar journey has somebody who is their ride or die. Because without Steve, it could have been really tough. Like I said, I went really dark when I found out, and I was being shunned by the people who were my family. My cousins were great, but my sister, and none of her family has any. They have nothing to do with me now. They think I'm a horrible person because I outed this story. Newsflash: if they're listening, it's not your story. It was mine, and
Right.
it wasn't my fault. I didn't have the affair. I didn't do it. So
But
shame.
yet you have to carry the shame.
Yeah. But I think whoever's doing it, I hope you have a really great safety net behind you of positivity. And if not, reach out to somebody who has either gone through it and can understand the pain, because I think that's about the only way you really do understand it. Get to a therapy group, something. That's kind of my take on it.
Right.
Yeah.
As for me, I would just go ahead and encourage them to go ahead and find out who their biological parents are, and be ready for a big win or a big loss, one of the two.
Yeah, because the outcome
is what it
isn't.
is.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. My advice would be to search yourself. If this is something you really feel you need to do to be whole, don't stop. You do what you got to do, but make sure you're going to be able to handle the truth, because it's probably not what you think.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's true.
And in my case, because my mom, and I know now why I remembered what she said that day, because my worst fear was that I was unwanted.
Right.
And I was. So you have to learn how to deal with that. I would do it again. I would still do it.
And that's been a theme of everything that you've told me. That's the one thing that's, I mean, there's many things, but that's the one big thing for you. And is it resolved?
I vacillate. It's kind of like, I used to think that things like this were linear, like, grief, like, Kubler-Ross, you go through the 5 stages. And I thought there was a beginning and an end. And that is absolutely not how it works. Forgiveness and understanding. Some days I'm able to forgive more than others. Some days I start out at step 2 and other days I'm all the way to step 5 again. So I go back and forth. It's a process. It's all a process. When you hear news like that, that's the event. But then the process starts to take place in how you assimilate that information into your life and what you're going to do with it.
Yeah, because it really does change. It hits to the core.
It does. It absolutely changes who you are.
For me, finding out at the age of 55 that everything I had been told about my history, my lineage, everything was a lie. Except for obviously my mom's half was true because, she's still my mom, but it was all a lie. How do you process that? Like you said earlier, Eydie, about you teach your kids not to lie. And then you're an adult and you find out your parents have lied to you your whole life. It's like, wait a minute, hold on. And
that's why it rocks you, because when we are learning as young children, one of the first things that we learn is you don't lie. You have to tell the truth. It's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. So that means everyone around me was wrong, and I'm supposed to respect that. I'm supposed to respect the system. I'm supposed to respect the system that handed me a fraudulent document saying this is who you are. You want me to trust that? I'm sorry, that's never going to happen. I am a very hard person to earn my trust. I don't trust easily, and I understand why.
My husband laughs at me. He said, my God, your motto is guilty until proven innocent. And I said, it is. It is. I think most things are not true.
Isn't it the European law? Isn't it European law?
I never heard of it.
European law. You're guilty of still proven innocent.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah. I hear what you're saying.
It reshapes you, Now, like both of you knew growing up that you were adopted, and so you have a little different experience than I did.
I think your situation, I would not have fared as well. I think that would have been harder. I think the fact that I always knew that definitely helped me because I was already adjusted to that.
Yeah. Well,
you know what I mean? Like I didn't have to unbelieve something I believed for 55 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you had to undo that somehow. And how does one even go about that?
It's tough.
It's
really tough.
It's from your foundation. So you can't go from the structure and remove from the bottom. Right. And yet that's what would need to be done. Your foundation would need to be reworked.
Yeah.
Because the one you were given was faulty.
Yeah. And like I said, I think it came from a place of love in the beginning, but that's not where it ended up.
Correct.
Somewhere along the line, my dad took it as he was going to win over Elmer Murray.
Right.
He was in competition with him. I watched him. He would come home and revel if he found out Elmer had lost money on a property deal. I mean, he would come home and be thrilled that Elmer had lost money on something.
And you never knew why.
And I never understood the level of hatred. I was just like, oh, it's two businessmen that don't get along, right? Small town. Yeah. They were two very big fish in a very small town. They didn't like each other. Well, that happens every day of the week, right? People. But Dad took it. There was a hint of personal in there, and I can never figure out what it was. Well, now I know. And by God, he was going to win. I got the child. She's my child. You lost.
But you're not a trophy.
No.
This is a human being. And this is what, I think I said this to you, Steve, the other day. You can dress it up and call it adoption if you'd like. But when one person hands another person money and then that person is handed a child, that's called human trafficking.
That's purchase. Yeah.
If you add some legal papers to that, it's called adoption. But in actuality, it is human trafficking. You can call it whatever you want, but that is what it is. When money exchanges hands for a human being, that's trafficking. Legal or not, I don't think it's the right thing to do. Definitely not under secrecy.
Yeah.
Definitely not under secrecy.
Absolutely.
Do you know how there were 6 million sealed adoptions done in this country from 1933 or 34, I believe, till 73? So you've got 6 million kids that were adopted looking for 12 million parents. And however many grandparents, cousins, aunts. I mean, that's a lot of people searching for each other
Yeah.
with nothing
absolutely.
to go on. And I tell you, the one thing that changed the face of it was the genetic testing stuff. If that had not happened, I never would have found anybody.
Oh, absolutely. I would have never found out the truth.
Yeah.
It's what blew it. Well, that and the family friend who kind of took the top off of that package.
Right. But with the genetic stuff, though, no one can argue that. Just like with my situation, like they all thought I was Ronnie's. Well, I have indisputable proof I was not.
Yeah.
So I rocked their foundation with that.
Yeah.
And I found out that I have a first cousin through 23andMe.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that's a story too, you know.
Oh, my
It was one of my dad's sisters who went away
Oh, yeah.
to Virginia. Yeah, and then came back home.
Went on vacation.
Went on vacation, and the baby, believe it or not, followed her right back to the same town, Hydesville, Maryland.
Really?
So I don't know that she knew, and he never contacted me, but I'm in contact with his daughter and very nice people, but he didn't want to know because I could have told him who his mother was. He didn't want to know.
Really?
He loved his adopted parents, and he thought that would be so.
Well,
And that's fine too. That's fine too.
that is fine
you know?
too. It is fine.
But I'm happy to follow my cousin's children's children, and I think that's very nice.
Yeah. I'm grateful that my story came out because knowing that I was stuck with that other family was really kind of depressing. And my brother has been amazing. He's a great big brother, and I think he really enjoys having a little sister. So,
I'm learning how to be a sister for the first time in my life, and it's wonderful.
yeah, it's awesome.
We
Congratulations.
talk at least once a week for a couple of hours. We vowed that we would always talk, stay in touch that way. But she's in Texas, and I'm planning on moving to Texas in a year.
Wow.
My youngest daughter, check this. My youngest daughter moved to Texas a year ago, out of the blue. She didn't know anybody there. About 6 months after she had moved, I found out my sister was in Austin, Texas.
Have they met?
Not yet. As soon as I found out who my sister was, I was on a plane within 48 hours to Texas, and I stayed with my daughter, and then I drove out to meet my sister.
Wow.
I didn't want to risk because, I'm old. I'm 62 now. So my biological mother's already dead. I never got to meet her. I did meet my biological father. He's 86. He didn't realize that I was his because everybody thought I was Ronnie's. Yeah, because I found him first. So I should have said this earlier. I have 2 half siblings. Both my sister and I have 2 half siblings because our dad married somebody else and had 2 more kids. I connected to my half brother, Jake. That's how I found out I was a Gordon. And once I had the name, I could run with it.
Wow. What
so
did
I
know we're up on time, but what did he have to say when you found him?
So when I first sent him a message to connect with him on 23andMe, he was very excited, and he sent me a very nice email. He said, I had to call my wife in here to take a look at this. And he's like, I have a half sister. Like, what's going on? And he said, it was exciting. And he said, is there anything that you want to know right away? Or, I can't wait to tell my dad. And I was super excited. I was like, oh my God, this is it. I've got a half brother. And then he ghosted me. I never heard from him again.
Wow.
And he also never told my sister Dory that I was in the picture either.
God.
I could have known her 2 years earlier if not for that. They actually put up a block. Yeah. So
Wow.
But I found out where my dad lived. I went on one of those been verified, people search things.
Sure.
And I got an address on him, and I didn't know if it was valid, but it was Front Royal, and that's a day trip. So I got in my car one day, drove up to this man's house and knocked on the door.
You did. I always dreamed of doing that.
Oh, don't do it. Don't do it. I'm not a woman that is at a loss for words very often. That door opened and nothing would come out of my mouth. Of all the times in my life, I am always the one people say, will you shut up? And The one time in my life, the door opens and I stood there, my jaw dropped. I did not know what to say. It was awful.
Oh my goodness. Do you think he felt any remorse to find out that you were actually his? And
I don't think he made the connection. So so the door opened. I said, "Are you Sonny Gordon?" "Yes, I am." I said, "Hi, I'm actually and I stumbled and I said, a relative, and I just wanted to get some information. Do you mind if I talk to you for a few minutes?" And his wife was there. She came around the corner. She took one look at me and her face blanched. And I know exactly what happened now. I look a lot like my mother. My sister looks more like my dad. My mother was half Korean, and she had the long, straight, dark hair. And I'm sure Heidi took one look at me and went, "Oh shit," because she backed away. She backed away from the door. But before she did that, she said, "We both have COVID." And I was like, okay. So I backed away from the door and we just talked through a screen door. But I said, when she walked away, I said, "Sir, were you married previously?" And he said, "Yes, I was." And I said, "I need information about that. I need information about your first marriage." And he said, "Oh, okay." He had no idea who I was. No. He just yeah. But I think he had COVID. He's 86. And then I found out from my sister that he's also been battling prostate cancer. So he was kind of out of it. And when he was talking to me, he was kind of looking up to the sky kind of, and like with his hand, he definitely did not connect that I was his daughter.
Wow.
If he did, he hit it very, very well.
Wow.
But he gave me my mother's name. And then he said, "And Dory came to us in 1960. And I was like, "That's it. We're 3 years apart. I'm 63. Got it. I'm in the right place." So, yeah. Of all the time to get tongue-tied.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man.
And I didn't know if this man was going to shoot me or what. I mean, I took a real big chance doing that. Seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he lives all the way up on the side of a mountain in Front Royal. Like, just getting there was a nightmare. But, people do crazy stuff. Like, I could have been shot. I didn't know.
Yeah, you don't know. Dateline is on every night. They're for a reason.
I know. I know.
Oh, wow. I will admit there was a time when my sister, the jokes got more frequent about me not being my dad's daughter. And I at one point asked her, I said, "Are you trying to tell me I'm really not dad's?" And she said, "Well, how dumb do you have to be? Of course you're not dad's." And I'm like, I just don't buy this whole story. And
how old were you when this happened?
I was roughly? I was probably 35-ish. And
okay, I'm thinking you were a young kid.
No, and I'm like, I just still didn't buy it. I just didn't buy it because that wasn't my mom. It just didn't add up. And so my sister at that point, she took that time to shut me out of the family. I was now over in, whatever corner she decided to put me in. She wouldn't speak to me anymore.
When did your sister become the matriarch?
I have no idea how that happened. And she refused to talk to me. There was no more. And so it just laid there. And I remember my husband going, "That is the meanest damn thing I've ever heard."
Yeah, it really is.
That is the meanest thing she could have ever done to you. I thought about it. And this was pre-ancestry stuff. This was 30 years ago, I thought about it. And I thought, because he was still alive. And I thought, if I found the address, and I thought about doing just what you did. And then I thought, well, how dumb does that look if it's just a family joke, haha. And I'm going to look like a moron walking up to this guy's house and saying, "Are you my daddy?" I just put it away. I put it away. I'm like, my sister is mean. This is a story she's made up. Blah, blah, blah. Then my dad died, and then my mother passed away, and that's when the family friend, it was just in passing. I said, "Well, you know the joke or the rumor," and that was when she was like, "Oh my God, And so
do you ever wish you never found out?
No, I am so glad I found out.
Really?
Yeah, I am glad I found out. It really, it changed a lot for me in the way of answering why a lot of stuff happened, why I was so hated by my sisters, because I was the unwanted child. I got love that they never got. I was really privileged in that way. And even with all this, like I said, my mom was mean as a snake, but I was her favorite. So, I can only imagine what their life with her was like because I was so much further behind them. And of course, now I have my brother. That's awesome. Every once in a while, something will happen and he will all of a sudden send me a text and go, "Hey, did you know that Dad did blah, blah, blah?" And so It's been fun. I've gotten to know my birth father through my brother. He has shared so much with me. I'm sure my father's wife knew eventually that I was his. But the funny part was my brother and his wife and my husband and I went to the beach, a handful of months after all this came about. We went to the beach together, Oregon Beach, and we stayed together for the weekend. And he and I were walking downtown, and he stops and he looks at me and he goes, God, if there was ever a question, it's answered now. And I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, you are Dad through and through. And I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, we have not walked by a single person that you have not talked to. He said, you've talked to literally everyone since you got out of the car. He said, that is Dad. You are Dad. Oh my gosh. So that's been fun, little tidbits like that. But no, I'm glad I know, because for me, it answered so many questions that just never quite added up for me. Never understood why I was so expendable. And I honestly have toyed with writing a book called The Expendable One, because that's how I always felt. I never felt like I mattered or needed to be there or was important in any way.
I started writing a book.
Oh, both of you.
I just started about 2 months ago. My sister's name is Dory.
Uh-huh.
So I'm titling my book Finding Dory.
Oh, that's adorable. That's adorable.
And I dare Disney to sue me.
All right, bring it. You have no idea.
Come on. You make in 2 minutes what I earn in a year. Bring it. Go ahead, sue me.
Oh my goodness. And I'm glad, Bill, that you've had what sounds like a really glorious life, and I'm so happy for you.
And he's an example of someone where adoption worked.
Yes.
It actually worked, know, so I'm happy to hear it.
And I will tell you, my oldest biological sister, Rena, he has given me plenty of pictures of my biological parents, and I really do like my dad.
Oh, that's funny.
And he passed away at like the age of 46 from a massive heart attack. But
oh my goodness, that's horrible.
Yeah, it is. But I really do look like my dad. Yeah. I may have to send you a picture. I'll tell you what. I'll post a picture of you.
Okay.
I think that would be fun for all of us to share.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody says I look exactly like my mother, but there's certain things I know I do that is definitely my birth father. And
if you go to my Facebook page, I pinned a picture of my sister and myself and my biological mother on the top of my post. Oh, so if you go to my Facebook page, you'll see a picture of me and my sister and my biological mother.
Okay. That would be fun. Super fun. Well, this has been a great interview. My goodness.
I think so too. Thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Oh, wow. Thank you for letting me be a part of this. I mean, this was, a lot about adoption, and I wasn't adopted, but I certainly was lied to.
Yeah.
And I think that was the hardest part for me as an adult at 55 years old, to find out that your parents have been lying to you. Flat out lying.
I thank you both for sharing your stories.
Oh, thank you.
It's been amazing.
Thank you, too.
Yes, thank you both. This has been amazing. So I'm going to wrap it up for Steve. He had to step out, so I will close this up. But thank you.
Okay.
Thank you both.
You're welcome.
For coming on and being willing to share really intimate. I mean, this is about as intimate as you can get, is sharing some of this stuff. And so if there's anybody out there that is struggling in any way, find a therapist, a group that would, if you don't have somebody in your life that you can, and my husband has a hard time understanding because he can't comprehend it. He's like, I don't understand this. It's so weird. And, he grew up in the typical Beaver Cleaver family. And it sometimes is very difficult for him to understand how I'm feeling, because sometimes just waves of emotion hit me where all of a sudden I'm just super pissed off. Like, like, oh my God, how can all these adults just have been lying? And then I'm sad. I'm mad that the opportunity to meet my birth father was taken away from me. That was literally not on the table ever. And, I kind of, and then I wonder, well, did he ever really care? Did he want to meet me? I mean, even though he knew who I was, he had the advantage over me. I didn't know who he was. So being in that small town, and like I said, he was one of my grandfather's very best friends. So he was no stranger to the family. I just didn't know that, he was actually my father. So that is weird.
Minor detail.
Yeah. Yeah. So, wow. Well, yes, let's share some photos and I will go. I actually have a picture somewhere on Facebook where I put together on a Father's Day post. I have my two fathers side by side.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Yeah. I'll share that with you guys. So thank you. Thank you for sitting for, oh my gosh, we've been on here forever, haven't we?
It's been like 2 hours.
I know, but I do hope that this is helpful to somebody out there who's going through something, whether you've just found out or you've always known your whole life and you're just curious. Do be aware that when you rip that Band-Aid off, there's a whole lot more than just the fact of a name, because it goes deep.
It does.
All right, you guys, thanks so much. And it
You
was
are
a
welcome.
pleasure. Truly a pleasure.
Same here.
I feel like I've gotten 2 new sisters.
I know.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I know. That's awesome. That's awesome.
You know, it's one of those things. There's some things in life, like, and this is the one that I know the best, so it's what I'm going to say. But because I was in sales for, like, you know, as a trainer, I had to get clients. You're selling yourself.
Right.
And something that I would do to establish common ground, if I'm talking to a woman, do you have kids? Yeah. So do I. Immediately, you've got a common bond. You're both moms.
Right.
The same thing is true with adoption.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking to someone and they're like, well, I was adopted. Oh, my God, so was I. But until you are in on it, you can't comprehend it.
Mm-mm.
Trying to explain to a woman what it's like to have a baby, you can listen, but until you are there and you do it, you don't get it. You can't.
Right.
And I think that's what's happened with your husband and with other people that don't know anything about adoption.
Right. Right. If you've never gone down that road, it's hard to comprehend the feelings of it. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I think that's why I never got mad at like kids when they would say things like that to me, because even as a young child, I would say like they don't get it. They don't know.
They don't understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
interesting.
That's funny. I used to have a part-time job selling appliances. I think that's kind of funny.
Thank you.
I love talking to you, and you're welcome, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, you guys. Thanks a ton. Have a great day.
You too.
All
Bye-bye.
Right. Bye.
Broadcasting from the Mesquite Works Steam Center in the scenic Mojave Desert, the Art Box sponsors thank you for listening. You can find us on Spotify, Samsung, iHeartRadio, Podchaser, and Amazon Music. Please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We are on Facebook and Instagram as The Art Box. We welcome all comments. You can email us at artboxvv@gmail.com. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of its hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of our sponsors.